From ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 in Southern California. This is BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgensen.
Welcome out to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio. I am your host, Tyler Jorgensen, and today I have the privilege of interviewing somebody who I've seen as an icon in the entrepreneurial space, a beacon, if you will, of someone who has deep knowledge, but is able to transcend that knowledge and make it very approachable. And I've met Roland before, but I'm deeply grateful and super excited to have Roland Frasier on the show. Welcome out to the show, Roland.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate you having me.
So we are both here in wonderful, beautiful Southern California, but we're connecting here digitally. And one thing that I have noticed about you is that you love to travel and you love to do amazing things. And that's great. But what is it if you ran into someone in an elevator and they're like, "Hey, Roland, what do you do?" How do you answer that?
Most people think drug dealer, but I know it's really funny. My wife, her father, when he asked her, he said, what does he do? And she said, well, he was like, "Oh, no, that's okay. It's okay. I understand." She was like, no. So at this point, I fancy myself a strategic investor. So I hope to be smart money that comes into deals and adds value and helps build companies, customer experiences, and revenue and profits in companies. And then my goal in doing that is to generally shoot for an exit 3 to 6 years after I come into a company.
Awesome. And so strategic investor can be broad. It can mean a lot of things. Let's go back to the early days. So you were an attorney, and I guess technically still are, but what would you say, when was that moment in your life where you realized that you're an entrepreneur?
Well, I was an entrepreneur attorney, but I was an entrepreneur way before that. So I was an entrepreneur. I think the last job I had was probably when I was 16, renting skates out for people at Golden Skate World, which is a roller skating rink in Richmond, Virginia. And but I had been playing out in clubs since I was 15. So I had a band that actually made money playing out in clubs. So that was probably my first real entrepreneurial journey. Long before that, I did magic shows and tried all kinds of other things, but as a kid. But really, the thing that I did for years, making money as an entrepreneur, my very first thing that I say stuck was being a musician. Interestingly enough.
So how has music, being a musician, being a magician, how have those things helped you in the business world?
Magician, absolutely not at all. No. I think really all of it is. All of that stuff helps from both of those things are performing. And I think that a comfort level of being able to perform, and performance can mean many things. And in this case, I think it means delivering content, teaching, but the ability to perform and bond with people and work with people and develop and nurture relationships, all of which are necessary anytime that you're doing something like that. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. But I learned how to haggle with venues for when you're playing. We'll give you the door. No, I want the door, but I also want this. And dealing with the difficulties of fellow musicians when you have bands and you have lots of egos, including your own, going around in a band with 5 to I think I had 17 people in the biggest one I was in, to dealing with managers and contracts and bookings and things that go wrong. I remember I bought a PA, a public address system that had the microphones and lights and mixing boards and speakers and all that. And so when I wasn't playing in my band, I would take those things, which cost a fair amount of money, and I would run sound and lights for other bands. And so I'd go into the clubs. And I remember one time in particular, it's very stressful because you don't get to go in as early as you want. And the show starts at 9 or the show starts at 10. And the show starts at 9 or 10, no matter what. So if your lights and your sound aren't working, that's a problem. And I remember in particular one time that there were all these people, just jam-packed club, and the band was going on at 9:00, and I had set everything up, all the lights, the snake between the stage and the main mixing board and everything. And I turned everything on to do sound check, and nothing.
Oh, wow.
And there's so many fail points in a system like that it took me about 20 minutes. They opened about 7 or 8 minutes late, but
Wow.
but man, you talk about pressure. So I remember like I'm sweating. I'm underneath the wire things trying to figure out what's the one thing. And it's always some one little button. But all of that stuff gave me great lessons in people and in performing under pressure, staying calm, not freaking out and giving up, just getting it done. That's all helped quite a bit.
Yeah, it sounds like, learning how to manage people's and partners, because I know you have partners in a lot of the businesses you work in.
I have partners in every business because I only want to do the things that I want to do and that I'm good at.
Has that always been the case, or is that something you learned through experience over time?
That is a great question. And I was trying to think. No, I've always had partners. I mean, I've started things, but I've always brought in other people.
So you'll hear some people that are very against partnerships because partnerships are toxic or whatever. Now, I think it's usually
don't partner with those people.
That's very good advice. And I also think it's because they don't know maybe some of the fundamentals of setting up a good partnership. What would you say some of the core principles of a good partnership would be?
The biggest thing, and I saw this from years of practicing law, where people would come in and they'd be best friends since 3rd grade, brother, sister, mother, father, sister, just family, best friends. I mean, I saw all these people come into the office, and the ones that did invest in the time to do a partnership agreement, this is when I was practicing law, they didn't have problems that were irreconcilable because they sat down and we talked about what were the expectations of each of the people going into the deal. And the reason that's so important is that, and this is something you learn in litigation in law, is no one leaves an interaction with the same perception of how that interaction went. No one leaves with the same understanding as to what was said or meant. No one leaves understanding really a lot of what happened from the perspective of the other people that were there. Right. So the reason that you can get expert witnesses when you're litigating to testify, the sky is blue, the sky is black, the sky does not exist, is that there are factual bases for all of those claims. And when two people get together, you and I go into a partnership and we don't actually have a very detailed talk about what we're each going to do. Well, I thought Tyler was going to run the stuff on that side of the thing. And you're like, Roland hadn't shown up for the past 3 days. And I'm like, well, I didn't show up because I did all my stuff. There wasn't anything to do. And you're like, dude, you can't not show up. I mean, literally, those are conversations that I've had with people. And so the people that take the time to work through that going in so that they do actually get themselves literally on the same page of a document as to an understanding of what each other is going to do makes all the difference. The people that didn't do that would come back and they'd be ready to sue each other. They'd be not friends. They hadn't spoken in the last 3 months. It's very, very stark, the contrast between starting the right way and not.
And so that's as simple as literally a partnership agreement where you write down all of the things that you think are understood and implied and the right. So I had somebody I knew once that used to always say, well, that's just common sense. And I'm like, well, no, because what's common to you is different than somebody else's experience and different than the third person's experience. So like, let's spell it out, right? And figure it out. Well,
here's the thing too, is there are degrees of common sense. So the specificity with which you do that agreement can be very different. And you can get a form from LegalZoom or a place like that, and you can fill it out and it's going to have maybe 3% of what you need. You can go to an attorney, and the attorney, if that attorney hasn't got business experience, which most don't, then you might get an attorney version of a LegalZoom document. But somebody who's been through business and actually had partnerships and has seen the partnerships that have gone wrong will have an entirely different result, an entirely different document that comes from that process. So, a lot of it is, if I was interviewing an attorney to help, would be, tell me about the partnerships that you've had that didn't work out.
Yeah.
Oh, everything I've done has been great. Awesome. I will see you later.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if they don't have any battle wounds, right? Odds are they don't really know the strategy.
yes.
Just one more thing on that topic. One thing I've noticed is some people in a partnership they're uncomfortable having that conversation. And I'm like, well, if you're uncomfortable having the conversation at the beginning, when everything's exciting, you're in the honeymoon phase, you're not going to be very comfortable having it when you're in a point of conflict.
Yeah.
That's the best time to test whether or not you can even handle being in a partnership together.
Absolutely. Yeah. With any relationship where you're going to be part, marriage, you name it. It's how are we going to deal with money? Who's responsible for that? What's reasonable? All of that stuff. If you don't have that conversation, then, it's going to be challenging.
So Roland Frasier decides to go to law school and practice law. Mm-hmm. When did you know, man, maybe being full-time attorney isn't the thing for me? I'm going to jump back into business. Or did you never leave that kind of being an entrepreneur?
I never left. So, I did the band thing. I got my real estate license at 18, insurance 19, securities 20, got a degree in accounting. So, I went through all of that time. I was doing deals. I was doing real estate deals. I started buying and selling companies, and I was running my own businesses. So I never left. I played music all through. I would go to law school, then I would go out and play in clubs, and then I was working with a manufacturing company that I owned at the same time. It's like I just never stopped. So there wasn't any decision because I was already there.
So I have two questions on that. One is, most business consultants and advisors these days will say, chase two rabbits, catch none, right? But you're the kind of guy that you've said, hey, I found a way to do more than one thing. So let's talk about that for a second. But then also, you were able to, you've done a lot, right? You've been a high achiever. You've been accomplishing a lot of things. And who did you look up to along that way? So let's go to that first one, right? Is that true? Can you spend more than one plate at a time?
Yeah, I think you can. And I think the key is in how you do it. If you were going to try to run multiple businesses, I think you would have a hard time. And I would agree with the two rabbits thing. But if you are partnered, then you're like a microprocessor. A microprocessor in a computer appears to do multiple things at the same time, but doesn't actually. What it does is it runs a set of instructions, and then it runs another set of instructions, and then it runs another set, and it's going back and forth. Let's say you've got 6 applications open. It's not running 6 applications at a time. It's running whatever code bits need to be run in rapid sequence on those applications. So as an entrepreneur with partners, you have downtime in your business where there isn't anything productive that you can do. So I went out, let's say you're the salesperson. That's your thing. You're really good at sales. Well, I've worked my leads. I've gone out. I've made my sales calls. I'm waiting for the contracts to come back. Even, I got yes from the people that I was pursuing. And now I've got downtime. Well, I can do nothing. I can check Facebook and email and stuff like that. Or I can go and do more selling, more of the thing that I'm best at. So, and the more refined you get, the more honed down you are on the things that you are best at, and the more of the other crap that you refuse to do, the more rabbits you can chase. Because my rabbits are all running in the same direction. So I'm getting closer and closer to all the rabbits at the same time, right? That makes sense. That metaphor holds true if the rabbits are running in the opposite direction. But what if they're huddled up in a whatever? What do the rabbits get at warren? If they're huddled up in their warren together, right? Then I can grab all of them. Awesome.
What is your favorite business that you've worked on that didn't succeed? Like, what's your favorite failure?
That did not succeed. that's my favorite that I still loved after it screwed me like that. Let's see.
We all have those deals or those opportunities that we think, man, this is going to be amazing. And we're so excited by it. And it doesn't work for timing or whatever reasons. But I always think those are the optimistic failures are the most interesting ones.
Yeah, I don't think about failures very often other than to analyze them and then move on. So it's going to be hard, but let me try. It was one of the first products that I created. There was a guy that was doing infomercials, and he always wore these brightly colored sweaters. I think it was Steve Levy or Mark Levy.
Okay.
He did a bunch of infomercials. It was called Amazing Discoveries. And his kid, I think he might have been Mark, and his kid, Steve, I met. And there was another guy, Rich something, who ended up starting a company called Demand Media. He owned a thing called the iMall. And I got with both of these guys, and we created a product called Getting Your Product to Market. And because I knew how to get products to market in terms of the legal side, but not a lot about it at the time from the marketing side. And these other two guys, one started the iMall, which I think MySpace ended up buying the iMall for a whole bunch of money. Smart guys. And so we partnered up, and I ended up printing 5,000 copies of this thing. And it was sitting on pallets this was not pre-internet, but definitely DVDs were not, you couldn't video stream at the time.
Right.
And so I had rented space to store these things, and I've got 5,000 copies of this beautiful package that are sitting in a warehouse, all shrink wrapped on pallets. And we didn't sell a single one that I can recall. We tried lots of different ways, but it just, they weren't good at that kind of marketing, and I didn't know anything about that kind of marketing at the time. And so I had a huge investment, had beautiful logos and beautiful duplicated boxes and tons of inventory, but just no demand. And so my favorite thing about that failure is that it taught me that it's the opposite of Field of Dreams. If you ever saw Field of Dreams, they said, if you build it, he will come. Well,
Right.
To me, it's if they come, I will build it now. So ever since then, I've said that I'm a reverse Field of Dreams entrepreneur. If they come, I'll build it, but I ain't never building it before they come.
Unless you have someone come and tell you that they know something about demand, right? Which is what happened there. He basically said, hey, there is demand, and I'm telling you about it, right? But we can't all just guess. And I think that was something I learned from the 4-Hour Work Week, was really about micro testing the market before investing into products. That's something that you teach a lot as well, is to really make sure that the market wants what you're selling.
And don't spend your time doing all the stuff that doesn't matter. I've watched so many people put everything together. Like I said, it's okay, I've got my logo, and now I'm going to go out and get my company set up, and now I've got an attorney to do this. And no, sell something.
100%. If you can't sell, you don't have a business. So why worry about a cool logo or stationery, right? I guess Absolutely. you can write your Anyway, I was going to make a really morbid joke. I'm going to skip that one, but
I like it. I want to hear it. Now I got to hear it.
And I think the things that when people hit roadblocks in their business, like when you had that, it didn't work the way you guys had hoped, but you learned from it and you've applied that into other businesses. I think sometimes, some entrepreneurs, right, when they're just at the beginning of their journey, maybe they're just taking that first leap, or they're just finding that first wave of momentum. What I've sometimes found is that they have a hard time connecting with people who are too much farther down the path than themselves. So, you and your partners, you speak on your guys' events and you have all these huge success stories, but someone who's just getting started trying to get that first sale, that can seem so far away from them, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you stay connected to the early stage entrepreneur and what is the advice that you give to them?
I stay connected because we have way more failures than we have successes. So we are always trying to grow. So we're always looking at, even if I'm not a big fan of startups because I think that it's just too hard to get that momentum. So I don't generally do startups now. But within our companies, we're always looking at how to extend the existing products that we have into extended markets or new markets, and how to develop extensions of the products that we have now or new products. So we are involved in a level of startup within the company each time that we look at trying to do a new profit center. So that I'm very familiar with. Or we take an existing thing that's making money and we verticalize it. So it's making money in real estate, so we move it to speaking or something like that. So I do believe that I stay in touch because I am continually facing the challenges that people who are starting businesses are facing. And because we are very, very focused on capital allocation, we don't start a company and say, let's throw $500,000 into it. We say, what do we need to start this, and what is the minimum capital that's needed before it can get to the point where it can carry itself, and clearly defining what's going to happen. So we're starting those businesses all the time. So I think that's probably the best answer. I am around people who are starting businesses all the time, and my personal time policy is that I give freely of my time to anyone who I think is serious about business without any fee or expectation of anything in return, as long as I have that free time. So the time I have that goes to businesses that I've got, goes to the businesses I've got. That's the priority. But after that, I just help people. So I'm talking to people all the time, and so I'm connected in that way as well.
That's fantastic. So what you found, what you just said, is that even though your companies and you have several of them that are doing very, very well, even though you guys are doing really well, you haven't gotten sloppy in how you allocate capital. You're not just saying, well, since we've done so well, let's drop $500,000 on this new launch.
Not at all.
You still treat each launch as close to bootstrap as you can, to be methodical and intelligent and good, stewards over your resources.
Correct. Absolutely.
And I love your policy of being willing to connect, right? I think I've watched as you grew, grew Facebook. I watched as you grew your Instagram, and kind of it's been really fun. And you connect with people, but you connect with them genuinely, and I think that's really neat. What are some big next things for Roland Frasier?
My current push myself outside of the comfort zone things are growing our businesses internationally through the sale to Clarion and Blackstone of part of Traffic and Conversion Summit, our big event. We're going into new territories that I haven't been into before. I've traveled a whole lot, very passionate traveler, but business-wise, I haven't really put boots on the ground to get into other countries. Like, we have digital sales in other countries, but that's important, but it doesn't count like getting there. So having our event we have a Traffic and Conversion Summit that will be in June of 2020 in Amsterdam, which will cover Europe. We have one in October of 2020 that will cover, that's in Singapore, that'll cover Southeast Asia. And then in 21, we're going into China and Russia and Brazil and other places. So that's my big get outside the things, because I'm drafting agreements with people who are in different countries and traveling there and negotiating, and there's translators and all kinds of other stuff. And there's translation of our product, and will they be good or will they be horrible because we don't speak that language? It's, culturally, what are we doing that's right or wrong? That's really fun and exciting and challenging. I've actually, in 2 weeks, I think I've got my first, just a small event that I'm doing in London, because I happen to be going over there. And I was like, I'm going to hit the ground running, and we're going to build businesses in those other places. And that's very, very fun. Building those events to be $100 million event company is pretty exciting. I'm very focused on that. And so
that's your legs event, right? I heard about that on your podcast, Business Lunch. And so you got one coming up in London and then also San Diego. Tell us a little bit about legs.
Yeah, so legs I need to change because it should be Lucy, because it should. Okay. Yeah. So I called it LEGS because it makes a good acronym. It's leverage, exit, grow, scale, but it's out of order, which bugs some OCD people like myself. So it should probably be LGSI, leverage, grow, scale, exit. That's what I started it out as. But I'm actually going to break that into 3 different workshops, because as I've worked on it, it's grown from about 2 days of material to about 7. And so I'm going to do now one. It's the premise behind it is, everything that I am focused on is how do we take existing businesses and really leverage every single part of it to grow and scale it, and then exit it to sell it. And everything that I have learned that I can document, I have put into this. And so it's grown from a couple of hundred slides when I started to 600, 700 slides now.
Wow.
And I found that I can't get through. I can barely get through a third of it. And I've also found that it divides in nicely into the things that people are most interested in are creative deal structure and finance. Like, how do I buy companies with no money down? I got 23 ways to do that. I've just done a lot of deals creatively by necessity. And what you can learn, though, when you're doing those things is that there are commonalities among them. And so going in and identifying, here are the common finance things, here are the common deal points, here are the common, all of that. And then same thing with the growth and scale. And then there are the leverage things are their own thing, as to how do I look at resources that I've got and that other people have, and then leverage the heck out of those across as many things as possible, and then leverage the leverage, and then trade on the leverage that I did and arbitrage it and everything else. So that's really fun. That's
It makes sense. I mean, like most businesses are going to be needing one of those 4 things at the moment, right? They're either looking to leverage or they're looking to get ready to exit. And I'm sure there's some crossover, but and so you have one coming up in London and San Diego. You can find more information at rolandfrasier.com. And please, in addition to this wonderful podcast that you're all subscribed to, check out Business Lunch with Roland Frasier. I listened to about 6 of your episodes today while I was driving and really enjoyed it. I liked the snackable ones about what's possible. It was fun, but those. I
love it.
What's something, I love what you said, right? Like, I've done a lot of startups, and I'm finding that the farther along I get, the more I'm attracted to mid startup, right? They already have momentum. They've already found one vertical, and maybe we're going to go look at expanding to the other verticals, right? What's something that you find yourself often giving, that commonality to a business who's found some success but is probably stagnating? Like, what's that? Hey, here's how to reignite your momentum or to take things to the next level.
It's really interesting because I just did a business that I have. I do a lot of deals where I'm either an advisor for equity and some small compensation, or I'm a consultant with equity. And so I had a guy that I consulted with today who, it's a 40-year-old company, and they've been kind of stagnant the past several years, which is why there was the opportunity to come in and help. And we sat down and it was like, okay, buying companies and all this stuff. And I said, well, the very first thing that we need to do is look at what opportunities exist within what business you have. And we started breaking down the cohorts of the business as to, I said, let's start with your top 10% of customers as a cohort and say, are they buying all the products that you've got? And it turns out that they weren't. And then we looked at one of the products that he had brought in, and this is really interesting. I thought this was pretty cool, is because this just happened this morning. So one of the products that he brought in was it's a printing company. And one of the products that he brought in was a thing called, it was a text messaging addition, like an add-on upsell that he could give to the people. And it only costs 7 cents per text to do this. It's really cool. It pulls data from weird places and all kinds of other stuff. But they said, well, it doesn't make sense to us to spend 7 cents a record. This is his top customers. Doesn't make sense for us to spend 7 cents a record for a 0.3% increase in conversions. And So he didn't really sell it to any of them. And when we did the analysis, I said, well, what are conversions for most of your direct mail customers now? And the answer was 0.5% on the first mailing. And I said, okay, so this adds 0.3%. He said, yeah. So 0.3% is 60% of 0.5%. So you're talking about a 60% increase in the number of leads that come in. And he's like, holy crap, I can't believe I missed that. And I said, yeah. I said, so if you're pitching it as you'll get a 0.3% increase and they're not connecting that that's a 60% increase in their leads, how many of those customers do you think would like a 60% increase in their leads? And he's like, well, everybody, of course, obviously. I said, okay, great. Now let's do the math, because this is for direct mail for real estate investors in this particular cohort we were talking about. So do the math, and it works out to about $90,000 in additional monthly revenue for the client based on doing this thing that only costs them $3,500. Like, man, right?
It's amazing to me, like how often this happens, right? So we have blindness to some of the things right in front of us because we see them all the time, and they didn't catch our eye the first time. But an outside point of view can help, and that's what the benefits of an advisor.
I think the key the key to that though is because it's easy to miss if you know all this stuff and don't have a system for applying it. But when you go in to your own business, when you're monitoring your own business, or when I go into a business, I have a system that goes through all of this stuff, starts at the low-hanging fruit, moves to the high-hanging fruit. And if you don't have that system and that checklist, it's easy to miss. But if you do, you're looking for it, so you'll never trip over it, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Obviously, I'd love your system. So the next question I had for you, and this kind of be second to last one,
okay,
is you guys you run War Room Mastermind. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the power, the benefit of masterminds for the entrepreneur.
Yeah, to me, the biggest thing is the connections. Everything is relationships. You know, that saying, your network determines your net worth, I believe 100%. So to me, the biggest thing about masterminds is that you will connect with people that you would not have otherwise connected with. It's really funny when I go through the onboarding for the War Room Mastermind. When somebody joins, I do a 45-minute onboarding call, and I do them myself because I want to really understand the businesses. And I can't tell you how many times when I say, "Why did you join?" people say, I want to be around other people that are doing what I'm doing, because nobody else in my world understands what I'm going through or what I'm facing or the challenges I have, and they think the business is wildly successful and so I don't have any problems, or my employees think that gross income equals net income, so they think I'm making all this money, but right now I'm not, because I'm reinvesting in my business, and I need people who get me and get my situation to hang out with. So I think I can tell you from my own data of doing all those onboards that's the thing I hear more than anything else. The next few things are learning what is working for other people in different industries gives tremendous ideas for innovation and application in your industry. So I think the number one thing is you'll get people that understand you. Number two, you'll get people that you'll get ideas and see things that are innovative outside of what you would have ever thought of that can be massively valuable for your company. And then the third thing is that the third thing would probably be that you get to get away from your business and that it's kind of a forced semi-vacation-ish kind of thing, because we ideally join a mastermind that does things in places you want to go, and right. And then you're going to make connections while you're doing that. You get that time away, and that time away while surrounded by people who are doing stuff frequently creates deals, so that not just ideas to apply, but also joint venture partners, companies that will acquire you, companies that will be acquired, people who can introduce you to other people who satisfy the things that your biggest challenges and stuff like that. So I think it's all that. the content itself is extremely valuable in a good mastermind, but it absolutely pales in comparison to the actual being there of networking and getting out from behind your desk or your computer or whatever you're on.
Absolutely. So relationships, network, industry perspective, and a forced break that gives you kind of a refreshed mindset and angle. So I know that you travel a lot and that you do a great job kind of hacking that. But to me, business is about creating the ability to have a lifestyle that we want to have. What is one major item on Roland Frasier's bucket list that you're going to go do or accomplish in the next 12 months?
Oh, gosh. Well, all that international stuff will be done in the next 12 months. So that's a for sure. But if I'm looking at bucket lists, I'm going to go outside of 12 months.
Great. That's okay.
I want to get to where I can rationalize a plane. I want a plane, but I can't. I'm having a hard time. Like, I have to get just really, really, really irresponsible level of money to do that for me, because I just can't justify $100,000 to fly across the country. It makes no sense to me, right? Because I'm always going to. Buffett said this, and it really impacted me. He said, people ask me why I don't get a new couch, and I say, well, if I look at the time value of money and it's compounding at 8% over the next 20 years, that couch cost me $150,000. I don't want that couch bad enough to spend $150,000 on it. So I look at the opportunity cost of what it would take to do that, and I don't do it. So that is my bucket list thing there, and my bucket list travel thing right now is Antarctica. So that'll happen in the next 12 months for sure. So those are my medium term bucket list things. I don't know if that answered your question.
It totally does. It totally does. I'm going to have to plan your Antarctica trip, and we'll make it into a mini mastermind. And
I like it. There's a company called, I think it's called Zero White or something like that, that you fly to, you have to leave from Cape Town, South Africa. They fly you down in a G4. And so it's only like 6 or 8 people, and you land in Antarctica. It's the only one that does this. Wow. And then take a cargo plane. They have one of those cool modular like base camp things that clearly are occupied by aliens that are going to kill everybody. It's a perfect horror movie setting. And then you take a cargo plane to the South Pole and hang out there. That seems to me like that's a cool mastermind. That seems very cool. It's something that definitely should be done.
Absolutely. Hey, I super appreciate it. I know we had a couple times that we connected, and you've been very, very hospitable working with me on that. So great. Very, very grateful for you coming out on the show. Everyone,
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Please check out RolandFrasier.com, warroommastermind.com, and please subscribe to Business Lunch Podcast. And really appreciate you coming out, Roland. And my BizNinja is everywhere you're tuning in. It's your turn to go out and do something.
Thank you for listening to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with Tyler Jorgensen. Please make sure to subscribe so you're first to hear new interviews and episodes. If you found this podcast to be valuable, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to visit our online dojo at bizninja.com to claim your reward for listening to the show.